Hi everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In today's MTPredictor video, I'd like to follow up on some analysis we were doing in our MTPredictor customer training webinar 2 or 3 weeks ago on the EURGBP, so a Forex example. But before we start, let's have a look at our risk disclaimer. So as usual, all examples in these videos should be considered as hypothetical. No trades were taken, they're just shown for illustration and training purposes only. Also remind you there's a risk of loss in trading and investing. Put another way, all professional traders should know, understand and more importantly accept that losses can and will and do happen. I'll repeat that, losses can and will and do happen. The trick is keeping the losses small. Also remind you that all trade decisions are your own sole responsibility. But before we start looking at the current position of the EURGBP, what I'd like to do is just bring in a recording of our MTPredictor training webinar. This was for MTPredictor customers that we did on May the 16th. So that's almost 3 weeks ago, where we had a look at this particular setup at the time. So it's always good to see what we were doing basically at the time. So I'll just run this video just for a couple of minutes. So this will be a good introduction to where we are, and we'll go and look at what the current position is now. EURGBP is going up nicely off our VS setup we had highlighted again a little while ago. This was when the announcement came in for the snap election here in the UK, I think. That was the day that happened. Down into our VS setup. Again, there's our high volume spike there. Here's the reversal. This is the analysis we've had on for quite a while. Will the market get up to that level? EURGBP? I don't know. All I know is if it does, that'll be a 4.7 hour profit. If it doesn't and stops you out, that will be a -1 hour loss. We've already looked at losing trades so far in this webinar. But that seems to be unfolding nicely. It's interesting that this looks to be an ABC correction here. So let's have a look and see whether that's the case. And if I put the DP on, so this is a daily DP. Let's go down to the 4-hourly chart. Oh, that would have been nice if that was a clean, clear ABC. What I was looking for to see whether that would have been a Holy Grail buy setup. If that had been a clear and clean ABC correction, then that would have been a Holy Grail long trade. Let's have a look at the 8-hour chart. There it is. So, Karen, this is exactly what you were talking about earlier, in that this is what we're looking for. And here's your higher time frame resistance. In this case, it was a daily. Here's your initial move up. Here's your initial correction on the slightly lower time frame, which is the 8-hour in this case. Here's our blue buy bar we placed the analysis on. Here's our trade setup that now would have you long as the market is rallying. Is it going to get up to this target? I don't know. If it does, it would be a lovely almost 11-hour profit. By now you'd probably want to bring your stop to break even. But can you see how, yet again, we do exactly the same scenario as we've done even right back onto the Nifty, Bank Nifty, looking at 3-minute and the 15-minute. Here we were starting off by our daily time frame. There's our higher time frame support on that. Then on the slightly shorter time frame, there's your trade setup in that direction to then get the trade entry. So if you'd missed the this VS setup, because this might have been quite a big setup, if you'd missed this setup here, then that would be the opportunity to get long on a slightly shorter time frame with a slightly smaller risk. So as you can see, we were setting up for a potential Holy Grail trade setup on the 8-hour chart after we found our daily support on our VS support at our DP on our daily chart. Let's now just get that out of the way. Let's now have a look at what the market has done since then. Well, as you can see, it's done exactly what we anticipated, which is very nice. If I just bring the video back in, that's what it was like at the time. This is what's unfolded now, and as you can see, the market has indeed continued to rally up. Again, this is the 8-hour chart on the EURGBP and has now hit our typical wave 3 WPT target. So as I said in the video, that would have been an almost 11-hour, well, it's 10.9 or 11-hour profit. So another great example of our MTPredictor Holy Grail trade setup. Again, please remember that the reason I've called it a Holy Grail is not because it has a high percentage of winning trades. That's not what professional trading is about. It's because when the profits come through, they're large in relation to the losses. So it's not about having a high percentage of winners, it's having profits that are large when the winners come through, but when the losses come through, and they will and do come through. If I go back and have a look at some examples here, there was probably a losing trade here. If I look at this particular blue buy bar, you can see this was on a black MTP trend, so it's perfectly valid. Again, it was a Holy Grail trade setup, and in this case it would have actually been stopped out for a losing trade. So this would have been a loss. But the trick, or what professional traders do, is when the losses come through, they use position sizing, in this case vary the number of lots to keep your risk less than 2% of a sample $20,000 account. So this would have been a 1R or 1 risk unit loss. So there would be a losing Holy Grail trade setup, which would be a 1R loss. A bit later on, here we have another Holy Grail trade setup. And in this particular case, it would have been a winning trade setup, but can you see how the profit would have been much, much larger? In this case, almost 11 times greater than the loss we had earlier. This is why I've nicknamed it Holy Grail, and it's why MTPredictor was actually first designed, basically way back in 2001 now, so what's 15 years ago, in that we're able to catch the bottom of a wave 2 to then catch a strong wave 3 swing. If I clear everything off and I perhaps put our major pivots on, you can just see that slightly clearer. I'll just make those a bit bigger. Here's our swings. You can see here's our major low, here's an initial rally up, initial correction, and another rally up. If I right mouse click over here and do Elliott wave major, you can see that's what it looks like. So here's a wave 1, here's a wave 2, which is the initial correction in Elliott wave terms. We then have a strong wave 3 up. That initial correction should subdivide into an ABC. So if I right mouse click, do Elliott wave intermediate, there's your ABC correction in your wave 2. That's what we're looking for in the Holy Grail trade setup. The unique thing about MTPredictor is that I use my isolation approach to Elliott wave that I invented all these years ago, in that we are starting our Elliott wave sequence at an important high or low. In other words, what we're doing is using it in isolation. We're not looking to put Elliott wave counts on all the time, because markets go in cycles. Therefore 50% of the time, or maybe even slightly more, markets will be in a confused pattern or not in a clear pattern when you can actually do analysis. So what I've do is I look at the higher time frame chart. In this particular example, it would have been the daily. I then look for larger degree support and resistance areas. As you can see here on the daily, the EURGBP came into daily support. We then go down to the shorter time frame, and then we start our Elliott wave sequence at that higher time frame support or resistance, or in this case support. So that's where we start the sequence, because it is coming at higher time frame support. The initial rally would be wave 1, the initial correction would be wave 2, subdivides into an ABC. We're then anticipating a strong wave 3 swing. If I clear everything off, that is then our Holy Grail trade setup. Right mouse click, do analysis, and that is why the profits are large in relation to the losses, because we're looking to trade the wave 3, which is the strongest and longest swing in a completed 5-wave sequence. As we've seen, there will be losing trades, we saw here earlier, but the trick is keeping those losses small. So I wanted just to do a follow-up on this, and particularly show you what we were looking at literally 2 or almost 3 weeks ago now, where we're looking at the analysis on the EURGBP. In fact, if we go back further, we actually looked at this VS setup coming in actually on the day of that. But we didn't really want to look at that today. I'm looking at this 8-hour ABC correction here. So it's always good to show what we were talking about a few weeks ago, then to follow up to see how it's unfolded. There's nothing worse than people just looking at examples in hindsight without actually showing losing trades, which obviously we've done this webinar, and trades that don't unfold as anticipated. But anyway, I wanted just to follow up on this and show you what is an absolutely perfect example of the MTPredictor Holy Grail trade setup that's unfolding, or has unfolded, on the EURGBP on an 8-hour time frame, and as you can see, has gone up to our typical wave 3 WBT target for a very nice potential profit indeed.